this field is what I realize is just it's so narrow, it's so small. It's most everybody kind of knows each other, but it's how did you guys get in started?
Well, so
Yeah.
I started 20 years ago. And really, I had no idea that this field even existed. Had my resume. I got first hired in when I was a junior in college, and I had my resume out there, and I got a call one day, and the job description was exactly what I had wanted, and because I didn't want a lot of the jobs out there were like circuit board design, things like that. I didn't want any of that. And when the job description came up, it was working in an auto plant for a systems integrator, and so that was it for me, man. I really from that point on, I haven't done anything else. This is all I've wanted to do.
Yeah, I'm with you on the circuit board. Um, the counselor for the college says, yeah, the electronics guys don't make a whole lot of money, and I thought they did. And they're
Yeah,
like, because I wanted to fix things like TVs and VCRs at the time.
yeah,
Um, but they were like, oh yeah, these guys don't make a whole lot of money. It's not a great career. And I'm like, okay, thanks. I'll pass. John, how about you? How'd you get started?
There was a cough. Oh, I thought you said Johnny. Sorry.
Oh
I
yeah, true.
I do. My father's an electrician, so I was doing electrical things for a very long time, and I just went to school to go be an electrical engineer. And I all my internships were with electrical contractors. So I actually thought I was going to be a contractor. My first job in Houston was with an electrical contractor. I was an estimator for Fisk Electric. Um, but I knew of industrial controls. I had the classes in college, and after I realized Texas wasn't where I wanted to live, I moved back to Indiana, into Indianapolis, and had a job, which was a lot of contracting. I was building buildings, but we were building buildings that were correctional facilities that had automation and controls, and we were using PLCs. So I was building jails with PLC 5s, and then we moved into control logics while I was there. And so I was doing contracting, but automation. So moving doors and intercoms and all of that. So it was really a kind of a cool mix of we were programming, we were industrial controls programming. I was building circuit boards because we had to, because things didn't exist. And we were doing automation with PLCs. So I did that for 10 years in multiple forms. And then moved on with the rest of the life from there. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into industrial controls.
Interesting. What is the oldest thing you guys have ever worked on?
No one's
I
going to say
think
relays.
yeah, like relay panels with relay logic.
Yeah,
There was one plant in Michigan I worked in, and this would have been I was probably in this panel in 2005, and the panel was about as old as me. I think the panel was commissioned in '86. I was born in '82, so that's probably the oldest system I've worked on.
do you guys do you guys want to actually see what some of your panels look like now after 20 years?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm assuming that you guys have done AutoCAD and just designed them up, and then maybe you went down on the floor, production floor, and wired them up, and they all look pretty and nice. But after 15 years of poking around, I mean, I'm sure they look like horrible by now.
yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. If they're still there, some of the systems, my early systems I put in, I don't even think they're there anymore.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
Go ahead.
No, that I'd never thought of that question. That's pretty cool, but no, I don't want to see him. I have him here.
because you know that all the like the wireway has been pulled off and removed, and everything's been kind of like loosened up per se. I'm sure there's some drives have been pulled out and put in, and probably not wired all that well. Zip ties and wire nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it'll be depressing. And then I'm like your nice set of electrical drawings that you put and placed inside the panel. Yeah, that probably somewhere missing.
Yeah, that seems to happen, sometimes the first week when you ship a panel and it gets on site. Like you go out there to start it up and all the covers are laying on the floor and the drawings are nowhere to be seen. And yeah, it can get torn up in a hurry.
I always thought about doing like for you guys that build the panels to have a barcode that you scan with your phone, and that would put you up on a website that would have the electrical drawings, the latest updated version or something of the sort. Whether they're up to date, that's another debate, but something, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
But would you guys say you're more on the technical side or on the more interface side or the sales side? What do you guys think is your strengths?
Technical, 100%. Well, a little bit of both. A little bit of both, because as you go on in your career and you get very proficient in the technical side, the sales, it's just natural. But my wife is way better at that than I am. Like she's the face. Like it's no contest.
Just over time, I've been able to talk to humans, but I don't really interface well with them. I mean, honestly, teaching for 7 years and standing in front of 500 people and figuring out how that works, that helped. But prior to that, you would have never I should have never done that. There was no way. When we're done here, I have to go sit in a dark room and drink a bourbon, but we'll do this.
You mean you're not drinking bourbon now and you're just not noticing it?
No, I've been good. It's water. It was some coffee, but now it's water. My teaching is aiding. I'm creating all the curriculum for her.
Nice.
Oh, okay.
You're teaching them all. There's going to be structured text in it, right? Tell them they don't need to use ladder anymore.
So you have to start with ladder because you have to understand.
No.
You do. But
we're gonna start off on a good leg here.
The biggest problem, Johnny, is that the best thing that has happened is she has an entire room in her apartment that's full of stuff that people have donated to her. The problem is there's an entire room of random things that people have cleaned out of their closets that they have donated to her. So so I'm trying to you've got a PLC next, a Phoenix PLC, and here's a click, and here's an 850, and now have some teacher who doesn't know what structured text or ladder is and have them teach what that is, right? So yeah, that's really where the problem lies. Doesn't work, man. You can have 10 stations that are completely identical and you will have 20 different problems during one lab because that you have never seen before in the last 6 years.
Right. I would think that starting on like something that was all on virtual machines would probably be our like control sys, or back in the day it was obviously Soft Logics with Alan Bradley, and they would set us all up with virtual machines, and they would do the snapshot to reset everything at the end of the day. But that's not a bad anyway. But you're dealing with physical stuff, so it's gonna be interesting.
And people who have no idea what this is, right? So a random shop high school teacher.
Relay logic. That's all you need to teach them. Don't even need PLCs.
See, now you understand. Structured text. they're already doing that because they're already learning Python and stuff, right?
Actually, I did get a lot of value out of the relay logic. I got troubleshooting skills.
It's
Right.
troubleshooting.
And by the way, you're not going to wire something the wrong, like the hard way, if you're doing it with relay logic. You're going to really think about how you're doing it. You're not going to run it into like 1,000 relays
Brad,
and
You don't. I had 3-phase lab benches with 480 that we were in college. Obviously, I'm not going to do that with high school.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
It was
they need
you
3
know what-
phase in their life.
Well, in the high school they don't have. Well,
Well, just make it 240 single would be fine. I want to ask
So-
John what's his problem with the Micro 800.
I have no problem with the Micro 800. They're a perfectly good tool for what they're designed for. Mopeds are great, but sometimes you need a semi truck,
Wow.
right?
um,
I mean, I blamed click processors, right? You can AutomationDirect has its place.
It does.
It does. Nobody wants to admit it, and I will be the first to admit it. You need to have it sometimes.
So tell me how you
I
really
mean,
feel.
if you
Well, I will tell you, my lab at Purdue was all do more processors,
Yeah.
right? I wasn't teaching, and I actually kind of did that on purpose. I only wanted to teach what industrial controls was. Here's a start-stop circuit. Here's how you do math. If you jump on if you can go out there and hunt my YouTube, all my labs are on it. J-Pillar board shorts, right? And it's just really simple. Here's a quick ladder on doing it. When it was all said and done, after 16 weeks, the students built whack-a-mole, like Chuck E. Cheese, but it was just lights and switches, and you punch, the blue light turns on, you hit the blue light, the green light turns on, and you do that. You time it, you've got timers, you've got counters, you've got random numbers, you're logging it, you draw an HMI and do those pieces. They created a machine when it was all said and done from small processes along the way. I did all that with AutomationDirect.
Yeah.
I happened to teach for Purdue statewide program. So I was a West Lafayette prof, but I existed in South Bend. Another larger company would give all their donations to West Lafayette because it was sexier and I was cheaper to maintain my lab. I had 10 stations, plus I had another 10 across the state that I maintained. So cost mattered, software was free, it checked all the right boxes, and I taught labs. So it has the right place. And mom and pop shops who want automation, they don't have to. Why are you spending big time bucks on a processor when it's still going to work?
Yeah. Why buy a 4-slot control Logix when you could buy a Micro 800 and get it all done in that one?
Absolutely. I mean, it works. No, but and it's all a matter of where you are and what you want to do. And if you got to write it in structured text, well, then do it in structured text. But sometimes a couple relays and a power supply is all you need.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, my toilet is an industrial controls thing, and it's just water pressure, right?
Well,
It's relay logic.
I feel like that's kind of becoming a lost art in our industry. How many times I've seen someone that doesn't know how to do a simple start-stop jog circuit with relays, and
yeah.
But yet they go, oh, we need a PLC to do this. No, you really don't. But if that's what you want, we can do it that way.
I pointed my students all the time to the sump pump because they all have seen a sump pump. I'm like, the water goes up here, it goes click, it goes down here, it stops. Guys, what else did you need? Our job as engineers, the keep it simple, stupid, the KISS method really is our job, right? So I'm upset at the Micro 850s that are all over the place because a guy will come in and sell a job to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. They're snake oil salesmen sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they're not doing it on purpose, but really when it breaks down, if you really talk to your client and you wanted to know what they wanted to do and you wanted to create a real long-term relationship with them, you would talk about the things we're talking about here.
Yep.
If all you wanted to do was sell that $30,000 project and move on to the next one, well, then that's what you did. And I don't, that's my problem with it, right? It's not,
Okay.
it's not growing our industry.
No, but
I have less issues with the.
Go ahead.
I have less issues with the Micro 800. I have more issues with the old like MicroLogix 1500s or anything that doesn't have Ethernet. So, and I know you guys are all laughing, but what are we going to do in the next 5 to 10? I mean, all of us are going to retire before these gets pulled out and removed. And I don't.
I'm going to make a lot of money in my retirement is what I'm going to do.
It's not security.
What would be a $30,000 project today, Brant, will be a $300,000 project in my retirement.
Just imagine the VMs he's going to have to run 500.
I in one part of my life, I redid. I was doing building automation and security, and there was a fire alarm panel. I had to have a Windows 3.5.
Oh,
yeah, and that's life safety, my friends.
Oh my gosh.
I also, with my Purdue time, I had, because we're state college, state university, so that if you are in Indiana and you wanted some professor time, you could get it. And I was on a project at a foundry that had a RS-45 network of DIN controllers that were communicating, running their furnaces. And every once in a while, one of them would just go stupid. It just would. And there was only one dude in the country, in Oregon, who still had the software to reload those FPGAs. And so they would disconnect that one, send it to this guy. And I was like, guys, no, there's 100 different solutions here. That is not the answer. And I couldn't get him to budge. That's, as far as I know, LaPorte, Indiana still has that setup going on in that foundry.
All right, so let's go on to some other stuff then. Yay or nay on DeviceNet?
I'd have to say no.
It's no. It had a time and a solution, and we don't need it anymore.
It definitely had its time, and it can go a long distance, and it's very useful for that. But anymore, no.
No, please no.
I did like it for when we were doing a pigging system. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with that or not. That was a little pig that they would send out to clean the line. And all it had to run is one cable. But again, so it had the power, it had the communication. It was just one cable. So that was pretty slick. But every single solution that I saw where it was daisy chained with a bunch of devices, I don't know about you, and maybe Bret, sounds like you've dealt with this as well, but sometimes it would just flake out and I would have to restart and I would unplug and replug and that kind of stuff. So
when it works, it's great. When it goes down, it's very hard to recover.
Yeah. So what would you guys say your favorite? I mean, obviously, Bret, you're probably more Allen Bradley. I'm the same. John, do you have a preference on which company you like? PLC? None. You're okay. Any? Would you pair up, or do you have like favorites at all?
Well, so like all of you, Rockwell has been where my industrial life has been. I spent 7 years doing AutomationDirect, so I know it quite well. That was teaching. So you mentioned, and I don't remember if it was on our before time or not, but you mentioned the soft PLCs. I lived that world for a little bit where we devoted an entire facility to potentially a Windows machine to not go blue screen on us in the early 2000s, which was stupid. And that scared the ever leaving, bejesus out of me. So when I was introduced to Beckoff, I was like, what are you doing? What is this IPC? It's still running Windows. I'm coming around to that. Johnny mentioned structured text. I think structured text is absolutely the answer, but it doesn't mean that we're going to go away from ladder, right? Cobalt still exists. So does Fortran, right? So ladder isn't going to go away before Fortran is off of Wall Street. Okay. So, but I like the code assist background, and I like what Beckoff's doing. I think it's good. I think it would be easier today for me to build a company that was based on Beckoff and get a bunch of kids who don't know necessarily industrial control. I say kids, 20s, right out of college kind of level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they will outcode me any day in a structured text, probably. And I could go ahead and train them up on what they need to know with three-phase, what they need to know about some relay logic along the way. And I think that would be a great path of moving the world forward.
Well, I have one caveat when it comes to programming and structured text is take the time to write your programs to where it tells you what's going on when there's problems. That's if you skip that, it doesn't matter what language you use.
So I had a mentor who called it self-diagnostic error codes.
Yep.
So yeah, and we were doing ladder back in the day in that too, but we had you have to have self-diagnostic machines that tells you why it's not happy. Absolutely. And I would even say there are some parts where maybe I do want the technician on the field to look at something, and then I do want it in ladder because I want them to be able to see the start stop circuit, the start stop control. How do I start the machine? How do I stop the machine? And then it goes into a black box. That's then structured text, right? Absolutely.
Ladder shouldn't go away 100%, but maybe 95% of it should go away.
Yep.
Where I see the biggest issues is, and I'm sure you guys can vouch for this as well, but if I go to an older system, whatever, say it's a red line or say it's a power panel view, there's a lot of data that they didn't put or incorporate in the HMI. So they're always having to plug into the PLC to get the data. Why is this not, when I hit start, why is it not starting? And it's interlocks, obviously, and you have to get inside the PLC. It's too bad that they didn't design an HMI to give you. It's like, no, that's because you're missing this, you're missing that, you don't have this switched over. So, I don't think that anybody would have a problem with having to plug into a PLC and having it structured text for text that don't like structured text, if you at least provided the operator or at least the screen all of the data that you needed to troubleshoot it. So I think it's a fundamental problem. We've got to, and we're all guilty of it, but given a project, and of course, if it's a small, cheap project, obviously you're not going to blow a lot of time to build all these screens to give you the operator. So it's built by the cheapest contractor is essentially what I'm getting at. But it's unfortunate that we're not providing more data from the PLC, so we don't have to interface with it so much.
I think that has to do with the OEM most of the time.
Although they are really good at some of the OEMs have done a good job from what I see.
There's a few that are out there that if they could sell their machine without ever having to have a programmer commission it or check it out, or even have a programmer on staff, they would just do away with that piece as soon as they could and just copy and paste and never advance what their machine does.
And I would say what I meant by self-diagnostic machine, Brent, is what you just said, right?
Yep.
There is that window that pops that says, you go to your alarm windows and you find out why it's not happy. and it tells you so that you don't have to walk through the code. I don't. I freak out every time I see a not engineer plug a laptop in, because now what are you doing, man? Because what did you hit save? And because you're gonna call me and I'm sleeping, and you made a choice and now I have to deal with it. I don't like that. Nor do I like making someone else deal with me making a choice, right? So it's a back and forth problem. So if I can make their job easier by coding it so that they never have to touch a computer, that's better. And like Johnny said, you should be able to commission a system if it's done right as a straight OEM. If they're making the same machine over and over again, they shouldn't have to do lots of custom anything.
But it costs more money to do it right the first time, and you're gonna. It's not just the first machine. It may be machine 10 down the road, where you finally figure out everything that needs to be there, to where you get that phone call from the wherever it's located at 1:00 in the morning. They're like, "Why doesn't it start?"
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, "Okay, well maybe I ought to." Well, you need to go reset the reset the e-stop button. And it's I don't know, it's a lot.
It is a lot. I was blessed every time I've gone into a company. They've done much of that along the way, and I was able to live on a great deal of other people's past logic.
Yep.
But we had that long-term goal. Like, it's the same as we were talking about the manufacturing. Where do you want to be? And let's start designing that way. When I don't know that I said on the here, but I built jails for the first 10 years of my life. And we literally, by the time I was done and moving on to other projects, we had a piece of software that we called the Jackalope, that any commissioning engineer would simply write a schedule in Excel of everything that we wanted to do. And then we pushed it through Jackalope and it created the code. So it built it, right? Blaine was a genius. He wrote that back in early 2000, right? He made that happen in Rockwell. And so there was some custom that had to be done after you rolled that through, but you could almost just go start the jail up from there, because we had already designed what a 32 door panel was. We had a design for a 16 door panel, and we were spending money. If I only had 3 doors, I still had a 16 door panel because I had to have that in the IO. But it was part of we were building the same systems over and over and over again. I never built our standard jail, but I knew what our standard jail was. And then it was a standard jail except, and then we did the exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had the same deal with rotational friction machines, right? Really big flywheel spinning, jam into it and weld. Anything from oil pipe down to valve stems. It doesn't matter. And it was almost as clean. It was always the same machine that we would go, and we knew all the same bits that we would do for those processes. So over time and that was the self-diagnostic mentor. The machine has to be self-diagnostic, because we were building them here in South Bend, and they were all over the planet. And we would get a phone call and we would say, "Oh, it's that valve over there that's causing that problem." And it didn't matter if the machine was the size of a room or the machine was the size of a bench. It all had the same code on it as an OEM. That's not, maybe where we're at now, where we're talking about as SIs, but that was the process that I grew up in. And that's where my brain sticks all the time of, how do I want to build this?
So what do you guys think is going to be the next 5 years? What do you think the hardest hurdle is going to be? Is it finding enough staff? Is it software? You guys have any insight on what you guys want to theorize?
I think what I see is the biggest challenge is just all of the different manufacturers of equipment now, like of hardware. So I mean, there's a lot of different PLC manufacturers out there, and I'll be honest, if I see a panel with a back off controller, I'm not going to be any help. And I just don't have, and I don't, it's taken me, I've been doing this for 20 years, and my career's been focused on Allen Bradley with some, Omron, Mitsubishi, GE, some others sprinkled in there, but there are so many right now that I don't think you have enough time to become an expert in everything. That's the biggest challenge I see.
So on top of that, Johnny and I talked about this. Potentially, could you one of the perks to, I mean, by the way, all of us grew up on the ladder logic, but
Mhm.
but if you did it in script, can you make that logic to where it's universal? Could you take that code from the back off, copy it into GPT, have it converted over to another script, and then put it into something else? Can you do a migration so easy that you don't care anymore? I don't know. I mean, maybe in the future that's where we can head. So the other part to the scripting would be is that you can do branching and then merging, with code. So those are the two things that I can see. Do you guys, what's your thoughts on those, or do you have any?
I
No,
see where
okay.
you're coming from on that. I think that's an interesting perspective on the software side. I worry about the hardware side though. And so one of the big reasons I'm such a fan of Allen Bradley is I can take a system that's running on a slick and say the system is 15 years old. I don't have to touch the hardware. I can just throw an Ethernet card in there and I can do a conversion. And I don't, the hardware works. So you can take 15, 20-year-old hardware and make it work with a brand new processor. And I love that. And I don't see any, I mean, there's so much old equipment out there. I think that's, for us, we've found that's the best way forward. I can't imagine taking out all that hardware, redoing wiring, makes it a lot tougher.
So
Yeah, you're stepping onto a lot of downtime when you do it. Have you guys ever used the I don't want it you would it's obviously your PLC 5 to control logics conversion hardware. Have you, I don't know, the different connectors, have you ever seen it and done it?
I've seen it. I've never done it.
I'm
It's
contemplating the slick to control logics. I've got a big slick network right now that
Mhm.
needs to be sucked in. So yeah, it was eye opening that it was available.
the only problem I would say with it, we did do one project with it. It had there was 3 racks, PLC 5 racks, and then we converted it over to control logic racks. My only problem was is that Allen Bradley wanted so much for even these cables,
Yeah.
$175. The little connector terminal that you have to click in is another $175. So your downtime, I mean, obviously, if you got to price that out, right? What is an electrician worth, and how fast is he compared to a connector? But you're also adding on these connectors, and you're adding additional hardware, additional potential problems. So you got to debate that. And so I still to this day, yeah, but by the way, you can find videos of them. They'll time 2 people trying to do the conversions, with electricians versus the connectors, but it costs.
So
I'll say it costs.
you reminded me of, again, this is a jail one, but we were doing an addition to a facility that was all on Omron. And this comes back to your device net. We didn't do we did Rockwell, right? So we ended up building our addition, putting the control logics in the addition, and then buying an Omron device net card. We yanked out the Ethernet card, we chunked in the device net card, and in one evening during third shift when all the customers were asleep, I took over a 6-story building, and it became one device net node.
Wow.
It was the slickest, most amazing thing, and the guy who orchestrated it is now a VP at where I used to be, and He's my computer whisperer. He is the most amazing man I have ever met in that role. I would go to Robot War with him as a general, because he walks into a room of everything that's XP and it's blue screen, and you go hush and it will all upgrade to Windows 11 and be perfectly fine. I mean, that's who this man is. And he set that up, and I then spent a month going and checking every point, right? We have to go to a door and you have to unlock door, make sure that door closed, because schedules get off and fat fingers happen. But essentially, we took over an entire facility in that one flip that way. It blew my. It was awesome. But I get your point. Hardware is. I mean, you gotta outweigh all those costs of someone pulling you wire and upgrading you. As far as the software and going to a back off or doing those kind of processes, each of them have a reason and a tool, right? You could take over a facility and have your main orchestrator be a back off or a Siemens, and still have that machine has Rockwell on it, that machine has Omron on it. Those machines are OEEs, right? People buy a machine and put it in the plant. You have to design your facility machine in a different way. So I look at it as a system level piece as opposed to each individual machine. And then you make your decision. Are you going to use Ignition as your SCADA? Okay, cool. Or are you going to use Factory Talk as your SCADA? Okay, cool. And those then give you answers for your future. As far as using DevOps and computer science tech, because that's what you're talking about by being able to branch and all the
Right.
other, we need to go that direction. But to Brett's point, we still have 30 years worth of installed equipment that isn't going to be at that direction. So it's a slow transition. I was talking to a guy at Automate who works on a PLC 2 that's running up in Newfoundland, right? It's still there. Why replace it? It's still making beer at that brewery. As long as you can keep it running, who cares? But you wouldn't go do a new installation as a PLC 2. You can't, right? It's just a thing.
Now, did they bring out like the old I don't know, terminal is what they call it?
Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to ask Hank. He'll tell you all about it, I'm sure.
What I liked about the terminal, it's just this huge box. Johnny, have you ever seen one?
Yep.
Okay. It had a handle on it. They knew that you were going to fly with it. Like it's robust enough to go on the flight. Anyway, pretty funny.